Shots, the world's #1 golf betting show here on VSiN and VSiN.com, the sports betting network. I'm Brady Kannon along with Wes Reynolds. Nick Henyon is at the controls as we get ready to take you through the next hour of golf betting conversation. And Mr. Reynolds, they got us again, buddy, depriving our audience of a winner as tour journeyman and better than 1,200 to 1 shot Jim Herman birdies the 17th hole of the tournament to overtake our play on Billy Horschel and capture the Wyndham Championship.
Yeah, the Hermanator. When he goes off, he goes off. It's a very rare occurrence for Jim Herman, being that he had 2 top 25 finishes in the last 2 seasons, but both of those top 25s win, 2019 Barbasol, and then last weekend at the Wyndham. I was pulling for you on Billy Horschel, and look, this is the time of year, isn't it, where Billy Horschel really goes off. He usually is a very good, sneaky FedEx Cup player. Remember that time a few years ago where I think he won an event and then finished runner-up in another, and it's like, this guy's red hot. He needs to be on the Ryder Cup team, and they didn't make the Ryder Cup team, which, of course, was yet another Team USA loss in that event. But, yeah, Herman, 61-63 on the weekend. That's pretty good. Who's this Morikawa guy, right?
Yeah,
129. 124, lowest score over the final 36 holes, and you had the pain this week, but our friend Justin Ray at the 15th hole reminded me of past pain for me, because the last time that 124 was matched on the weekend was 2010 Greenbrier, Stuart Appleby. Shot a 59. I had Jeff Overton, my Indiana University brethren, who had a 3-shot lead going in. He was in the final group. Got beat by 1 by a 59 from Stuart Appleby. So that's golf pain, and we all have it.
I remember that 59, a closing 59, not too shabby for Appleby. Horschel went into Sunday trailing by 3 shots, and he came out guns a-blazing, shot 4 under on the front 9, got the lead on the back 9, but he killed us by bogeying the 16th hole and missed out on forcing a playoff. And we had him surrounded once again. Our colleague Matt Humans, Wes, he had Doc Redman and Kevin Kistner, who both finished tied for 3rd. I, of course, had Horschel. I also had Webb Simpson, who for the 4th straight year finished top 3 in this event. And since the restart, we've had a lot of winners. We've had a lot of near misses. But me personally, this is the 5th time I had a guy finish in 2nd place.
Yeah, your pain was stateside. Mine was overseas with Connor Syme, the 54-hole leader at the Celtic Classic. Ended up finishing 3rd to Sam Horsfield, a Florida Gator, much like your son. And he has now won 2 events in the last 3 weeks on the European Tour. Keep an eye out for that name when he comes on the PGA Tour next year. This kid's going to win, and win quickly.
The Celtic event on the European Tour, is that why you wore green today?
It is, and I wore, I guess I wore Celtic green. I just happened to see that Gordon Hayward's out for 4 weeks for the Celtics, my fellow Brownsburg, Indiana native, so hopefully he gets back for them. But, yeah, going back to the Wyndham, look, Jim Herman, pretty consistent. 3rd in strokes gained putting, 4th in approach, 5th off the tee, 4th tee to green. Doc Redman, actually one of Matt's plays, 1st tee to green and 1st off the tee. So, that's a birdie fest. That's what it is. My nearest guy was Russell Henley, who tied for 9th, just never made any birdies late. I thought maybe he could post a number and have these guys shoot at it. But at least you didn't lose $500,000 like the bettor who bet Siwoo Kim after the 3rd round at DraftKings at, I believe...
Plus 125.
Yeah, 125 was 5-4. That's right. Had
a 2-shot lead, or no, 2-shot lead Saturday night going into Sunday. He was at -18. The next closest was -16. Horschel was -15. Bet $500,000 on Siwoo at plus 125.
That's not a player, and Siwoo is very talented, but he is very erratic. He is a boomer bust. This isn't exactly like betting, Rory McIlroy or Bryson DeChambeau or John Rahm with the big lead here. And he went down, but he did rally, ended up tying for 3rd. And look, back to Jim Herman. Jim Herman and Zach Johnson, who, good call by you, I think on a top 20, finished tied for 7th. Rallied and played their way into the FedEx Cup this week.
Yeah, Zach was really impressive, the winner of this year's Payne Stewart Award, and that really turned him on to finish inside the top 10. This is Long Shots, the world's #1 golf betting show here on VSiN and VSiN.com, the sports betting network. Brady Kannon and Wes Reynolds with you live from the South Point Hotel, Casino, and Spa on the tip of the Strip. Rufus Peabody will join us shortly to help us break down this week's tournament, the Northern Trust. It is round round one of the FedEx Cup Playoffs, reserved for the top 125 players in the FedEx Cup points standings. And Wes, I want to ask you quickly about Brooks Koepka. You go back to the PGA Championship, the infamous final round Sunday where he shot 74. His now last three competitive rounds are 74, 72, and 70. He missed the cut at the Wyndham. What is your assessment? Is the knee still giving him problems? Will he show up this week in Boston? And will he get his act together in time for the U.S. Open?
You know, I'm wondering about that injury because part of it, too, is I think that, look, if Brooks Koepka's out of it, and sometimes DJ does this a little bit, too, if they're out of it, they just kind of go through the motions. Yeah. They're not a guy that grinds like a Tiger Woods, like we saw him way out of it in the PGA on Sunday. He's out there early, grinding, trying to get the best round he can, making putts. And look, you see some of the prices, Brooks, this week, and some of the markets, you know, in the mid or low to mid 30s, about 33 to 1 on average. And look, that number is always tempting with him, but you never know when he's going to show up. You see him 33 to 1 here at the Northern Trust, which is a major quality field. Then you see him at the U.S. Open. He's probably like mid-teens.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the major bias is obviously something that the bettors in the market think is very, very real.
Danny Willett has really fallen off the pace, and she shot 82 on Sunday at the Memorial. He did not make the playoffs. Siwoo Kim, who we mentioned, who was in the lead, the 54-hole leader at the Wyndham, he's really gotten awful hot, made 8 straight cuts in a row, had a top 20 finish, 2 top 15s, and then, of course, finished third at the Wyndham. He is in the playoffs, and so is Patrick Reed, your defending champion here at the Northern Trust. He has 2 top 10s and a top 15 in his last 4 starts.
A lot of people that like him this week, too, and I can't disagree, even though he did not make my card.
Similar conditions this week in Norton, Massachusetts, as we saw last week in Greensboro. High humidity, very little threat of wind. There is a threat of some thunder showers. Temperatures in the mid-80s. Looks like 10-mile-an-hour winds is about the high water mark here for TPC Boston. And in the Boston area, that is where our guest hails from. It is time to bring in our guest. It is the member guest segment here on Long Shots, and we welcome in professional sports bettor, a personal friend, one of my golfing buddies, a multi-time contributor here on VSiN. He is Rufus Peabody. You can follow him on Twitter at Rufus Peabody and also catch him as the co-host of the Bet the Process podcast. Rufus, thank you so much for always joining us. Good to have you back here on Long Shots. You are not too far there from TPC Boston up in the Northeast. Give us some local insight about the track and what kind of player, what kind of skill set might this layout favor this week?
Well, first off, thanks for having me, guys. Second, I would love to give you some local insight, but they haven't really let me on that course. I believe it's a private course, and I'm not in Boston long enough to really try to gain membership. Not that they would probably have me anyway with the way my golf game is right now, but I do have some insight in the course just from the numbers. And overall, it doesn't really favor any specific type of golfer. It's a kind of track where anybody playing well really has a chance. If you look at the guys who have the best course history there, Gary Woodland, Siwoo Kim, Paul Casey, Louis Oosthuizen, Brian Stewart, Brandt Snedeker. Those are the guys that, according to my numbers, have overperformed their baseline the most at this particular course. And if you look there, you don't really see a lot of patterns there. Those guys tend to be pretty good all-around players. Stewart's obviously a guy that isn't long and is very straight. Woodland puts it out there a good ways. But if you look at the bad side of course history, Ryan Moore has been awful there. He's underperformed by about 30 strokes. He's also in that sort of Brian Stewart mold. He's not a long hitter, but very accurate. And then also on the bad side of course history, Cameron Tringale, Bubba Watson, Justin Rose, Kevin Na. So there's not that kind of fits with what I found overall too, that there really isn't a ton, that there isn't one sort of skill set that this course really favors. And if you look at it hole by hole and look at what people have done on it in the past, there's a lot of flexibility. There's very few holes where you have to hit a driver. If you look at the sort of average driving distance on holes, there's a bunch that are in the 280s range, which basically indicates to me that some guys are going to be hitting a driver and some guys are probably going to be hitting three wood. There's a few in the 250 range, but I mean, I think it really is the kind of course where if you're a good driver of the golf ball. If you're like Rory, you can hit a bunch of drivers. If you're a Henrik Stenson, you can hit your 3-wood, and you're not having to sort of play out of your comfort zone. But the one very interesting thing to me is that it's a course where course history is not particularly predictive. Meaning that guys like a Ryan Moore, it wouldn't surprise me if he actually plays really well, despite being so bad at this course in the past. Course history, how guys have done in the past, has had very little to no impact on how they actually play there. So those are kind of some tidbits I've seen. Also, it's a higher variance course than Sedgefield. Sedgefield, you had some very low rounds last week. Obviously, Jim Herman, but overall, it's a course with not a lot of round-around variance. There aren't a ton of really, really high scores out there. You don't have a ton of separation, I guess. Whereas this is a course that is a little bit more usual in this regard. There are more high numbers that can be had, and I think there will be a little more separation and more randomness.
Rufus, in terms of how you might be attacking the board this week, there's a little bit of counterbalance here because more often than not, you get these FedEx Cup events, Northern Trust, BMW, and whatnot. It's usually going to be a class player or a guy that was playing well for a certain time frame, but you kind of look at this and then you got to factor in that only the top 70 move into the BMW next week at Olympia Field. So do you look a little bit more down the board for some of these bubble boys that maybe could emerge? We saw it last week at Sedgefield with Herman and Zach Johnson and Shane Lowry playing their way into the field.
Yeah, I think a guy like Herman last week, I guess you could make an argument that he really didn't have much to lose, so he might as well just gun at every flag because he's, to get in, he needed a solo second, I believe. He obviously did one better than that, but I don't personally look at it. I tend to think overall that players are going to be playing their best regardless, or at least trying to play their best. But I guess the argument could be that guys outside of the top 100 are going to play higher variance strategies, go after pins, etc. Whereas guys maybe in the 60 range, guys that basically need to make the cut to move on, are going to play it safer. Play to the middle of the greens, just make sure you make the cut. And it's an easier event to make the cut just given the fact that it's a smaller field, only 125 people. So, I can see how it can have a strategic impact, but I've never actually looked at that in my own handicapping.
Rufus Peabody's our guest. You can follow him on Twitter at Rufus Peabody, professional sports bettor and a friend of the network here, VSiN and VSiN.com, the sports betting network. Rufus, you mentioned it in your opening answer there about the golf course, that you look at numbers, and I know that about you. You have a math model for virtually every sport that you handicap. Couple questions here. How is golf different from the other sports that you apply the model to? And also, how do you account for some of the intangibles? Are you able to quantify some of the things in your model that you might not think are able to?
Well, golf it's a mix of art and science, which I think most sports really are. But it really gives you, you ask questions of the data and you try to get an answer, and you try to take an approach that sort of allows you to sort of discern what is random versus what isn't. So, but a lot of times you don't get a definite answer. A good example of that, and these sort of quote unquantifiable things that you try to quantify, is Brooks Koepka in majors. I can look back and I could say he's this big outlier in terms of how he performs relative to his expectation in majors, and overall there is some predictive skills. There are certain guys that do play better in majors, but I look at that and I say, okay, what would be the sort of impetus for that? Why would one guy play better in a major? I guess controlling for how difficult the course is and things like that. I would think a guy that plays well in majors would also play well on difficult tracks. But I think in one aspect would be that these guys, the top guys, are sort of prepping for this. They're sort of targeting the majors for the preparation. They spend time at the courses, that kind of thing. Whereas a guy like I don't know, a Sung JM or I'm just literally looking at the names on your board right now. But some of those guys aren't really gearing up for the majors. They're just playing every week and just trying to do the best they can. Whereas guys that, but Koepka still stands out there. And so do I give him the full credit for like how much he's overperformed there according to my model? Or do I say, okay, like there's, some of this is randomness, of course. And so that's one of those things where you don't really have a good answer. And in majors in general, if you're trying to figure out how they're different from regular events, you only have a sample size in the last 20 years of 80 majors. Actually, I guess a little bit less now because you only had one major so far this year. But so a lot of it, you really have to sort of take your general knowledge of what is skill and what is luck and sort of and make an educated guess. And I mean, a lot of what I do is the model averaging too. I mean, I will do things a few different ways and try to see if my number's robust to these differences. Like, I don't want to be making a huge bet against Adam Scott simply because he hasn't played except one tournament in the last 6 months. So that's the kind of thing where overall I would be docking him a lot for that lack of play. But maybe I say, okay, well, let's sort of lessen that a little bit and see what my number turns out there.
Rufus, kind of piggybacking off that, when you look at your models, do you find more often than not that your models indicate, okay, these are guys I want to bet on, and these are guys that stand out to me, or do they kind of spit out where it's like, well, these are guys I want to fade more often than not? Do you find that it moves one way or the other?
It goes both ways. It feels like recently it's been much more guys that I'm on. There's certain guys that I'm really never on outrights especially. But Spieth was one of those guys for a long time, and now recently I've actually had a little bit of value on Spieth in some matchups, and I think that there's potentially, depending on the line, you can get some value taking if you can get like plus 125 or higher on Spieth against Daniel Berger this week. So generally, though, it has been guys that I'm on repeatedly. Rahm is a great example. I've been betting Rahm, it seems like, every week for the last, year. I feel like he's been perennially undervalued. Rory's another guy I've been on a lot recently. He's a great driver of the golf ball, which is I would say the premier skill, I guess, in golf, being able to hit the ball long and hit it straight. And his short game has struggled a bit recently, but I still think he's one of the top golfers in the world. He's in that elite group. I've been on Billy Horschel a lot. He came up just short last week, unfortunately, but I'm probably going to be on him again in the future. So.
Rufus, talk to me about who you're on this week. I'm with you on Jon Rahm. He's one of my plays this week, and I thought I found some value with Jordan Spieth, too. I took him in a matchup at plus 130 against Terrace English. How about who's on your schedule this week?
Actually, I think that matchup I was quoting actually might have been English, not Berger.
Okay.
Sorry. So I think we're in agreement there. But I like Rory outright at 15-1 or better. I actually make that number 12-1 again. During his struggles since the restart, he's actually played to his baseline off the tee. He's where he struggles is his short game mostly, and so that's something that tends to be. There can be a lot of week-to-week variance there. I feel like it's easier to sort of get that back than it is to figure out how to hit the ball straight, and that's what the sort of numbers bear out. So that's one reason I'm on him. Schauffele, I like Rahm as well, depending on the price you can get. I have a small edge there on outrights. Schauffele is close to a play. I make him about 20-1. He's a very good all-around player. And surprising guy, Ryan Moore, I like at 150-1. He's cost me a lot of money recently. His bogey to miss the cut on 18 last week was particularly costly for me, especially in DFS. But he's struggled around the greens too. But I think that, and he's narrowly missed a couple of cuts. And if you're looking at something like, you see an MC, you don't see that he actually was one shot off the cut, and he's been in that situation a few times, if I recall correctly, since the restart.
Rufus, got about 1 minute here before we have to hit a break. Anybody you've already targeted for the U.S. Open here in a few weeks at Wingfoot?
I have not thought about the U.S. Open yet. I take it on
1 week at a time.
Yep.
Have you, I know Winged Foot is obviously a private course as well. Have you taken a look or seen anything about this course? I've just started to dabble in some of my research. It appears extremely difficult, Rufus. You talk about hitting it long and straight. I think that's going to be emphasized big time at the U.S. Open.
I mean, that tends to be the premier skill at the U.S. Open. And, U.S. Opens have changed a little bit over the years. You've had, I guess, Aaron Hills. You've had, what was the one out in Washington?
Chambers Bay.
There you go, Chambers Bay. So the USGA has changed it up a little bit, but so as I said, I haven't done any research yet on it, but it'll be interesting to see if it's sort of one of these newer types versus sort of a traditional one like Marion or Olympic, where you basically just have to put the ball in the fairway.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the latter. They're more traditional. The last time they were here in 2006, the leaderboard was littered with, Steve Strickers and Jim Furyks and that type of typical U.S. Open player. Rufus, great to speak with you. Have a good week in golf, and thanks for joining us here on Long Shots.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Rufus.
All right, that is Rufus Peabody. Follow him on Twitter at Rufus Peabody and check him out. His Bet the Process podcast, one of the best out there. We'll come back and talk Tiger Woods here on Long Shots. Wes Reynolds and Brady Kannon with you on VSiN and VSiN.com, the sports betting network. From the Indeed.com studio, find the high-impact hire your business needs at Indeed.com/high-impact. That's Indeed.com/high-impact for more information. It is the Tiger Tracker segment here on Long Shots. Brady Kannon and Wes Reynolds with you, taking a look at Tiger Woods and what he is up to. He is in the field for round one of the FedEx Cup Playoffs. He sits in the 49th spot in the FedEx Cup points list, and he is coming off of a 37th place finish at the PGA Championship. He should be able to advance to round two of the playoffs relatively easily, where the top 70 will advance. That will be the BMW Championship coming up next week in Illinois at Olympia Fields, but it'll be a little bit tougher for him to get into the top 30, Wes, and make the Tour Championship. He's going to have a couple good weeks in a row to crack the top 30.
Yeah, excuse me. Tiger is a former winner here back in 2006, back when it was called the Deutsche Bank Championship at TPC Boston, where it ran from 2003 to 2018, but he hasn't really played it a lot in recent years. I think he had a third, I want to say, back in 14 or 15, just looking at my form sheet here. Actually, excuse me, it was 2012. But this course did get a redesign from the last time he won. I don't think that would necessarily disqualify him or qualify him one way or the other. This is a Gil Hanse redesign, much like it was a Palmer original, but Gil Hanse redesigned this much like he did Doral, Trump National Doral, Plainfield, Ridgewood, which are regular stops in New Jersey for the Northern Trust. So,
he is the in vogue redesigner, isn't he?
He is, and he's designed, and I use that in a couple of my plays, that Gil Hanse angle, because I think it plays more like his course than it does what you would see like a traditional Palmer at a place like Bay Hill. But look, he has won on the course before. I think it's not really the FedEx Cup or the money that motivates him. I think what's going to motivate him, and I would assume he's at least going to play the next two events. I don't know if he can make the Tour Championship. He's going to need a good finish, certainly at one of these two events to do so. But I think he just wants to get reps. I think getting reps, and maybe, and I even kind of thought about him this week because, of course, he was all over. He was on the media. Some of the morning shows this morning showed one of his interviews that he did with Golf Digest on a Skype or something, and he caddied for his son Charlie this weekend, who won a 9-hole event. He was, I forget what the name of the event was called, but he was under par, and he was the only player under par. So we have to look forward maybe to another Woods going off at even money at all these tournaments and us trying to beat him on the outright market and failing miserably like we all did for several years. But anyway, maybe that put Tiger in a good frame of mind. You know, my boy, I was out there carrying the bag, and my boy did pretty well. So I think you're going to see him at least have one good performance, whether it's at the Northern Trust or at the BMW. He's going to have some kind of quality performance, I think, going into the U.S. Open. And I've mentioned he's somebody I'm eyeing for the U.S. Open, and at anything in the high 20s, I think would be fair. I'd like to get as much as I can, you know, take the best of it. But look, he just needs to show maybe a little bit of a sign, I think, over the next 2 weeks, and then I think I'd be more comfortable saying, okay, he can make a go at this.
Well, we will likely see him over the course of the next 2 weeks, as you mentioned, maybe 3 if he gets into the Tour Championship. We will not see him the week before the U.S. Open, the Safeway Open out in Napa, California. He never plays the week before a major, plus he's probably not going to go from one side of the country to the other.
No.
And Wes, I know you're really fancying him for the U.S. Open. Would you prefer that he plays twice before it, or gets 3 full events in before the U.S. Open? Because I think at this point in Tiger's career, there's a real balancing act between getting enough reps, as you say, getting enough tournament competition under his belt versus staying healthy.
I would say twice. And look, he has won the Tour Championship before on multiple occasions at East Lake. So if he gets there, he's certainly going to be a threat to win that event. And he's done it even pretty recently, has had success there despite all the injuries. But I would at least like to see him play 2 weeks. If he doesn't make the top 30, obviously he's won the FedEx Cup before. $15 million for the winner. That's a drop in the bucket, though, for Tiger Woods for his career. That's not something that necessarily gets him up out of bed. He's not mad at the money, but that's not what's going to drive him at this point.
Well, $15 million will get just about anybody's attention.
It'd get mine.
I think including Tiger's. So we'll see. I kind of wonder if he is just intent on making it 2 weeks and getting 8 rounds of golf in and then heading to upstate New York, or I should say the Long Island area, to take on Winged Foot for the U.S. Open. We will talk major implications in the next segment, talk about Tiger Woods. He made his way up there for a practice round this week already. Snuck one in on us. We'll come back on Long Shots right here on VSiN and VSiN.com, the sports betting network. Course that rates the highest in each factor is Bali High Golf Club, a tropical golf course paradise located on the Las Vegas Strip and in the shadows of some of the most famous hotels in the world. At Bali High, designed by award-winning architects Brian Schmidt and Lee Curley, you will find hundreds of mature palm trees, lagoon-like water features, beautiful bunkering, and a stunning clubhouse home to Sealy Restaurant and an indoor-outdoor patio experience and event space. The course offers Bluetooth technology, caddies upon request, Jell-O shots, model-like beverage cart staff, VIP service from curb to course and back again, high-quality food and beverage, and a par 3 challenge where you can double your money with one swing. The stunning Bali High Golf Club, located in the heart of the Las Vegas Strip, is a golf jackpot, and there are many reasons why. Play today. To learn more about the Bali High experience or reserve your tee time, call 888-427-6678 or visit BaliHighGolfClub.com. That's BALIHAI golfclub.com. It is our major implications segment. The next major championship on the calendar is the United States Open Championship at Winged Foot. It is just 5 weeks away, and seeing that we are in the Northeast this week, West, Tiger Woods and Justin Thomas, they stopped off at Winged Foot and got in a practice round on Monday. Not an uncommon practice. We've seen this a number of times over the years from many prominent players.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to get some look at it, and who knows if it's the current USGA setup or if there's going to be some adjustments here over the next month. I suspect that there will be, but I'm with you. What we were talking about with Rufus Peabody earlier, I'm more in the latter category. I think it is going to play more like a traditional U.S. Open. It's not going to be an Aaron Hills where Brooks Koepka and all these guys are shooting double digits under par. I'm not sure that the winning score is going to be 5 over. The last time I was there when it was Jeff Ogilvy, but you're probably looking at 3, maybe I would guess at least. I'm not an official projection yet, but 2 to 4 or 5 under par. I would think. I don't think they want to totally bury these guys, but I think they want to make it a tough. Yeah, maybe they do. But
you talk about the Aaron Hills. They're probably still stinging from that one. The PGA I thought was brilliant, but the USGA looks at that and they're probably thinking minus 13 is a little too high.
That's always the big story, more than any other major going in terms of how is the course going to play, what is the USGA going to do, and sometimes they get it dead on, and then sometimes you got the players whining and complaining, which they'll do anyway if they're not shooting 25 under par. Oh gosh, it was so hard. I was like, we need more hard courses. You never hear the guys complain on regular tour events like 22 under, it's too easy. Maybe a few guys do, but for the most part, these guys like making birdies and they don't like grinding, but that's what you have to do at the U.S. Open.
I think they do like a good balance. I think they enjoyed the PGA Championship. We know how much they like TPC Memphis, TPC Southwind in Memphis.
I thought both those events played fair.
Yeah.
Where you
very
had
hard, but
if you hit good shots, you got rewarded.
Right.
But if you didn't, you got punished, and that's the way it should be in some of these majors and WGC events. So, look, I'm looking forward to it. I always like the U.S. Open. It's my favorite major, personally. I know you're a Masters guy, and most people are Masters guys. I know Humans likes the Open or British Open, as he would call it. I call it the Open Championship. But anywho, those are our favorite majors for different reasons. U.S. Open's my favorite major because I think it's the hardest test of the year. And that's what I like. I like seeing these guys have to grind for pars and make 15-foot par saves and do that. And where it punishes them a little bit. You miss the fairway? Hey, you're in deep stuff, so we can all relate to it.
Absolutely.
As just fans and play weekend hackers and whatnot. So I'm looking forward to it. I always like it. It is our national championship as NBC, and it is going to be back on NBC this year. So we get that great Yanni in celebration of man theme back, which I heard last weekend at the U.S. Amateur, which was held out at Bandon Dunes, which was really entertaining golf on Sunday. But so I like having that back. It just feels like the U.S. Open belongs on NBC.
Yeah, Johnny Miller, we'll see if he steps back into the booth for this one. But we alluded to it with Rufus Peabody, and he talked about driving, total driving, I guess, if you will, being long and straight, maybe being his most important statistic. And I think that is going to be most important at the U.S. Open. I believe the rough is going to be probably worse than Harding Park. I think the course will play tougher than Harding Park. I think there's really going to be a premium on driving accuracy. And I think the no fans is really going to make a difference this year because the galleries typically contain a lot of errant shots, right? And they also trample down the rough. So
that's a very good point.
You might hit one awry, and the gallery's there, and they've trampled down the rough, and there's no problem. Well, they're not going to be there this year. I think this thing, you're going to have to look hard at driving accuracy, and it's going to play really hard.
And I think there's a big difference between being in that 2 to 3 inch intermediate cut and being in that 5 to 6 inch deep stuff. And because you're in that deep stuff, you're basically like, well, I need to save bogey and be happy and take my medicine and take my 5 and move on, or take my 5 or 6 and just move on to the next hole. When you're in the intermediate cut, you can still do a little bomb and gouge, but it's not going to be like most of these events where, okay, I'm going to hit the crap out of it as hard as I can, and if it goes if miss a fairway, I can still get it there with a wedge or a short iron. You're going to have to take medicine on some of these holes.
Yeah, and not only are the holes long, but there's a lot of dog legs out there, too. I think it's going to be a very difficult event. Now, last week you mentioned you were kind of leaning on making a play on Tiger. I know we both mentioned Tommy Fleetwood. Have you taken any action coming into this week of long shots?
I have not, but I'm probably going to maybe over the next week or two get at least a couple early ones like I did for the PGA. Tommy Fleetwood likely will be one of them. He loves New York. First round, he came over during the restart before he started the actual competitive play. He played at Shinnecock Hills and shot a 64. Now, not exactly a USGA setup, but not exactly an easy course either at Shinnecock. So he loves these New York majors, and I think he could rise to the occasion. And then you look at those short prices just to see Brooks Koepka 33-1 this week and 12-1 at the U.S. Open. It's amazing. So the major Koepka is already very much factored into the market.
Yeah, Rufus talked about that as well, and that is an interesting phenomenon. Brooks Koepka is a different player in the majors. Tommy Fleetwood, of course, still at 30-1. Xander Schauffele at 20-1. He's seeing some action. Dustin Johnson and Jon Rahm and Rory McIlroy all at 16. And sure enough, Mr. Major himself, Brooks Koepka, the king right now at 12-1, sharing co-favoritism there with Bryson DeChambeau. I don't know. Bryson might be on my fade list because you've got to be so straight. I believe.
Yeah, he can't miss fairways here. You cannot miss fairways. It's fairways and greens. So the ball strikers, the guys of the greens and regulation, the strokes gained approach, that's going to really matter this week.
We could end up with a Jim Furyk, Steve Stricker, Jeff Sluman, Ryan Moore type leaderboard, man.
I'm all for it. Let's have some chaos.
Let's get to our plays for the Northern Trust. We return and break down round one of the FedEx Cup Playoffs right here on Long Shots. Humans, Reynolds, and Kannon, all our plays for the week. Keep it here. This is Long Shots' final segment, the match play segment where we throw out all of our plays, Matt Humans, Wes Reynolds, and myself, all the plays that we are making this week. It is round one of the FedEx Cup Playoffs. It'll be a 3-week affair. Next week, the BMW Championship, and then they wrap it up at East Lake Golf Club in Atlanta for the Tour Championship. We start in Norton, Massachusetts at TPC Boston, and we'll begin with Matt Humans' plays. Doesn't have any head-to-head matchups or top 10, top 20 type stuff up there just yet, but 5 outrights. Justin Thomas, one of his favorite players. He likes to bet Thomas week in and week out, and hey, you can't argue with that too much. 13-1. Go ahead.
I was going to say Bryson DeChambeau and Justin Thomas, the last 2 winners here at TPC Boston when it was still the Dell Technologies Championship, and look, they're the co-favorites, and why wouldn't they be?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, DeChambeau, Rahm, McIlroy, Thomas, it's a coin flip, and they're all in that neighborhood of 13 or 14-1. Schauffele, there's those 2 favorite players right there, Justin Thomas and Xander Schauffele. Schauffele, a pretty good number there at 20. I was really hoping to get better than 20, but it dipped down quickly. He's already into the neighborhood of 17 or 18-1. Webb Simpson coming off another top 3 finish at the Wyndham. He's got him at 30-1. Jason Day, the Australian, coming off of a very good performance at the PGA Championship at 32-1. And then Tony Finau, another guy who comes off of a great performance at the PGA, Finau at 40-1.
And I believe with Webb, he does have Paul Tesori back on the bag. He was missing for about a week, dealing with some injuries. So that always makes Webb a better player to have Paul Tesori. He's very reliant, and why not? Because he's one of the best pro jocks out there. I'll transition to my plays really quickly if we want to do so, because Matt and I match up on 2 of these, and one of them being Jason Day. And I recall back PGA weekend, I had a fellow golf handicapper who's an excellent golf handicapper named Josh Perry, and we had a Twitter exchange. He's like, Jason Day is going to go off at like 25-1 and win, and that's when he's going to win, when we were getting him at 50 to 60-1. And I tweeted back at him, I go, Northern Trust, lock it up. And here I am betting him for the Northern Trust. He's seemingly fairly popular this week, but look, this is a guy that I believe led the field in strokes gained approach at the PGA, was second in greens in regulation. He's hitting the ball about as well as he has in years. It's just, can he get the putter going? The short game has always been the strength for Jason Day, especially around the green. He gets up and down, and and saves par a lot of times when most players are going to make bogey. So Jason Day, I think he's back, and he's going to win one here soon. And I said the same thing about Finau, because I kind of joked as Jim Herman was winning the Wyndham. I go, must remember that Jim Herman has 3 PGA Tour wins next time I click submit on Finau, and kind of joking around, and Finau kind of bared the brunt of it, because we know the story. He's got 31 top 10s since 2016-17 and hasn't had a win since that Puerto Rico Open back in 2016. But look, he's right there. I mean, he was there at the PGA. He's going to break through at some point.
Let me jump in here real quick.
And
we match up on a few this week. I am on Jason Day and Tony Finau as well. And Rufus Peabody touched on this too. We've seen historically with this golf course, TPC Boston, that driving is not a stat that you need to pay attention to a whole lot. There's been shorter hitters here. There's been bombers here. But I think most of all, you don't need a lot of accuracy.
Tee to green, basically.
Yeah, you can bang the ball out there, and that's exactly what Jason Day and Tony Finau do.
Yeah, they do, and so I definitely like them. And then another one that I see we match up on is Adam Scott.
Yes, sir.
I just felt was kind of disrespected, and I think a lot of the reason why Adam Scott's 50-1 here and not probably in the 30 range where he should be is because he only has one event that he's played. He played the PGA Championship, played pretty solid, actually putted the ball really well.
Yeah, and for 3 of the 4 days, he was absolutely a factor.
But one of the things that got me on Adam Scott this week was the fact, number one, he has won on this course before. He was actually his first PGA Tour win, I think, was right here at TPC Boston in the first Deutsche Bank Championship in 2003. But Scott, if you recall last December, he won the Australian PGA Championship after the President's Cup, and then he didn't play for about 2.5 months. And where did he return? He returned to a course where he's had success and was a previous winner, and that was Riviera for the Genesis Invitational. He went on and won that. So he's not necessarily off that long of a layoff, but I think the rust thing is overrated with Adam Scott. And I think
seems to be, right?
He is starting to play better, and I could see him going very well here. I don't think that it's going to bother him not having a ton of reps. So we did match on that, and then looking, I know you mentioned Johnny Rahm earlier, and there he is on the card at 14-1.
Yeah, and Rufus talked about this too, that he's been betting Rahm, week in and week out for a year, and I know he feels the same way about Rory McIlroy, and you and I talked about it. Rory, Rahm, Justin Thomas, Koepka, take your pick.
I almost bet Rory this week. He's a 2-time winner on this course, but I kind of figured, you know what? Maybe I just got to let him win. Maybe if he beats me at 14-1, he beats me. But I know that he is going to win at some point because he's Rory McIlroy. And I know you're a big fan. Rufus is a big fan. I'm a big fan of Rory. I always have liked him just on a personal level, let alone as a golfer. But he's going to win at some point. But he hasn't really fired. I think he's been all of the events that have happened this year, and he's even been very candid about it. He's like, this has really thrown me off.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what to do. I'm not used to no spectators. And
I'm with you. I'm not going to jump in until I see something different. Mm-hmm. And I love watching the guy, and it's not like he's played poorly, but he hasn't really even been recording a lot of top 10 finishes. So I'll take one of those other favorites like Rahm or Thomas, which I've been on a couple of times this summer, and I'll go ahead and avoid Rory McIlroy for now. Tony Finau, he's had 3 out of his last 4 starts. He's finished top 10, and he comes off of a really good PGA championship. And I thought maybe this is his spot where he's going to get that second win. You talked about it. Hey, why not? Why not at the PGA championship? I don't think it's going to happen at a major, but it just might happen here. I have a good feeling about Finau this week, and I tell you, a guy that I love right now who's the defending champion. It was at a different golf course. They played at Liberty National last year, but I think Patrick Reed, red hot right now, and I think this course, the way we're going to separate the men from the boys, I talked about I'm not putting a lot of emphasis as far as driving the ball, but I think it's going to be on approach and around the greens, and there's really no better short game on the planet than Patrick Reed.
Exactly. And I definitely took a hard look at him. He was one of the last guys I left off. Look, what you said about Finau is true. He was 4th here 2 years ago at TPC Boston. He was runner-up the week before when it was the Northern Trust at Ridgewood, which is a Gil Hanse renovation, much like TPC Boston. He was runner-up to Bryson DeChambeau. So, look, you haven't seen a lot of the adjustments. Finau is still mostly in these elite fields, kind of in that 40-1 range.
I thought that was a nice price.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean,
what was he for the
would've...
PGA? Wasn't he closer to 30 or something?
Yeah, he was around the same range, but you're not really seeing the adjustments on him, and I still think you're getting square prices for a guy that's getting up there in the top 10. And one of the things somebody asked me about if there's a bias in terms of the top 5s, top 10s, top 20s, and I think they really keep it true to form on that, because it would seem like maybe a couple books may shade it a little bit on Finau because it's like he doesn't win, but a top 10 he's money,
right?
You know, so but I think they by and large stay true to form. One thing I wanted to mention in terms of the short price guys we talked about with the Rory, DeChambeau, Thomas, John Rahm. I went with the 5th option there. He's kind of right in that range, and that was Dustin Johnson.
Yeah.
And I simply went with Dustin Johnson because he fits the course profile. A lot of this is the Gil Hanse angle. He won at Plainfield back in 2011. The putter was really, he played well enough, and I know you had him for the PGA. He played well enough to win.
Absolutely.
He just got beat.
Yeah,
it's not anything he did wrong.
Shot a 68 on Sunday. Yeah. That's not too shabby.
Yeah, 5th in the field strokes gained putting, and he's on the bent grass. It's not bent POA, but it's bent grass, and he's usually better on this, a little bit better than he is on Bermuda.
Right.
He's just got to improve on the tee to green game, and if he can do that, he's going to be absolutely right there. And I felt he was kind of the ignored guy if you want to take like the top 5 or 6 in the market this week.
Well, I felt similar at the PGA. You know, everybody's looking at Koepka, you know, Mr. Major and all that stuff, and I felt nobody had a better record on the West Coast than DJ. He almost got there. My outright plays, I basically did the same thing as far as top 5, top 10, top 20 finishes. And let's take a look at some of your matchups, Wes. I saw you had a matchup there. I believe Abraham Answer over Sungjae Im, was it? And I looked at that one as well.
And I did use Abraham Answer on the outright at 60-1. A lot of people don't know who he is. He's the number 25 player in the world. So he is a really good player. He just hasn't had that breakthrough win here stateside. He's won internationally a couple times. He was second in this event last year. That was at Liberty National to Patrick Reed, the eventual winner. He's had 3 runner-ups in the last calendar year. He was the 54-hole leader, actually, here at TPC Boston 2 years ago, which DeChambeau eventually won before Answer slipped to 7th place. Really good all-around game. He's not right at the top when I submit those statistics every week. Approach, tee to green. He's not like right at the top, but he's right the level below. So you know he's just really solid. It's not like he excels at one thing. He's pretty good all around and everything. So Answer was a guy I used. Sungjae Im, look, he played very well last week, but I wasn't sure if maybe that was just the product of an easier course or what that was. But
Answer did not play last week.
No,
right?
Sungjae did.
Right. And I think it's a good fade of Sungjae here because, again, the guy has played so many weeks in a row. And I think it showed, I can't remember if it was last week or I think it was at the PGA. I can't recall. But I was basically going against him for fatigue reasons. And here we are again. He's playing again.
And he doesn't take times off. Exactly. And then my last 60-1 shot, Matt Fitzpatrick, I was just buying on the drift here because he was like in the 40 range or the high 30s at the PGA. After
he ticked people off.
Yeah, and because he followed because he gained 10 strokes putting in Memphis, and then he regressed the next week. So now people have forgotten about him.
Now, not a bad play at all. He seems to show up in big events. We'll see if he does this week at the Northern Trust at TPC Boston in Norton, Massachusetts. Next week, it's round 2 of the FedEx Cup Playoffs. They'll be at Olympia Fields in Illinois. And to join us and help break us down here on Long Shots will be Lou Ford, a friend of the network. Remember, folks, it's VEASAN and VEASAN.com, the sports betting network. Enjoy the golf, everybody.